Dun ba-dum, dun da da dun. In this podcast, I will be talking about the Niko rig. Everything you will need to know when it comes to fishing both styles, or a couple different styles of the Niko rig, the basics, how to rig it up, so on and so forth, and what is a Niko rig. So let's start off with that. What is a rig that essentially has a soft plastic with a nail weight or some sort of nail inserted into the soft plastic with a usually some form of just ordinary J hook up top. So pretend it's like a plastic worm. For those of you just listening, my finger is essentially a plastic worm. The nail would be on the on the bottom of the worm, and then the hook would be somewhere toward the top of the worm. That is the basics of a Niko rig. And then obviously people will make alterations. They'll modify in particular ways. And I'm going to talk about two different methods of using a Niko rig. First off is the method that most people treat it as, or when they think of a Niko rig, they think of it as like a finesse setup. And that's what I'm covering here. They think of it as a rig that is designed to be fished with, like, say, 6 or 8 pound test, some really light line, a little like a zoom trick worm is usually a classic example of what they'll throw on it. Little weight on the bottom, and just a little open hook up top, and they'll fish that around rocks. That is the first option. The second option is an altercation of it. You beef up the line a little bit, 10, 12 pound test. What I use for this, I'll even show you the setup I was using for Niko rig. Just a moment. For those of you just listening, what I'm bringing out is just a medium power bass rod, which is 10 pound mono. Same kind of thing. I'll throw my jerk baits and top waters on. I will throw top waters on the same rod. So, and there you have it. Maybe 15, but 15 will probably be the heaviest I go with this technique. And all I do is, instead of using a worm, I'll go to a little creature bait, and I will basically modify from there. So basically it's a flipping creature bait technique. So with that being said, allow me to. So with the first one, basically you're going to take you treat it like you would a drop shot, cast it around like shallow rocky areas, drag the worm around it with the lighter line, and then that's more or less it. With the heavier setup, so basically like a medium light spinning rod. Let me go back to it. Medium light spinning rod. Maybe like a 15 pound braid too, but you don't even need to do that, because if you're just fishing rock, fluorocarbon works just as well. What else? Yeah, that's basically it. Just light finesse stuff. And then on top of that, so that's your light finesse stuff. And then, so that is the classic Niko rig. The one that I was talking about, 10, 12 pound test line, little just smaller size bass reel, nothing too fancy. But the one that I have here, if you can find it still, is Alexa 100, very durable reel. Great reel as well. And just a standard bass rod, 10, 12 pound, basically like a medium power, 6'6", 7 foot. 7 foot would probably make more sense because you're using it as a pitching rod. Now, that being said, let me get into baits that I would throw for that style of technique. So that's the one I'm going to get into a lot more, just because that's the one I was using a lot before I came here to California for this trip. And it just, on top of my head, just easier to work with. So little baits, for example, little craw style baits. Not very bulky craw baits. Like the Zoom Critter Craw is a good one. If you've ever seen it, it's a little finesse craw with a nice little fat bottom. It's a great place to put nail weight in. Also, great thing that's coming to my head right now, boxed nail, just generic nails you find at the store, 1.5 inch long nails are great, and they're significantly cheaper than the counterparts of actual nail weights. Significantly cheaper, and they work just as fine. You can buy a box this big, and it will last you forever. And you're going to want that, because especially if you do it the way I do it, you will tear off Niko rigs. You will tear off your plastics without question. So, little creature bait. Basically, any kind of creature bait that's been sitting in your bag for 5 years and you never got around using it, which is why I've had a couple of those bags of plastics. And the reason why I say that is just because the way that I rig Niko rigs, they come off very easily. So you can lose a lot of plastic. A lot of people put like a rubber band around their trick worm, and it makes a lot of sense. So, that being said, now let me go back to something very important. In order to flip with a Niko rig, you have to have a particular kind of hook. About a size 2 hook probably would work well. Just a smaller, almost like a drop shot hook. Only difference though is a drop shot hook is usually going to be an open finesse hook. I will go with the ones with the little wire guards, like those weird little Wii guards that they coil the little metal wire around. If you've seen these, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, it will make no sense to you. Basically, all I'm trying to say there is they sell it where it's just 2 little wires that go around and basically curve around the hook. So like this is the point of the hook, and like that. And essentially, those hooks in particular I like for this, just because they go through weeds super nice, and I can pitch them into nasty cover without even thinking twice. And that's what I will do. So that's essentially the Niko rig I'll have. So let me go back to that creature bait, for example. Let me use one of these grubs as a example of what I would do. I don't use this bait in particular that often, but essentially, if you can see it, great. If not, I'll explain as I go along. This would be the bottom of the bait. You're going to take your nail weight, insert it, so it'd be like so, or it'd basically be really stiff down here just because you have an 1.5 inch nail in it, and that is fine because with creature baits, having the body of the bait stiff does not make a difference. Hence why that's usually the rule of thumb with hook sizes on like Texas rigging creature baits. What you care about in terms of action is the top half. You care about the flaps. You care about this right here. Flaps, appendages, whatever your bait has. If it's a brush hog, it has all the weird things. Grubs have the 2 or the 1 curly tail to it. Whatever it may be, whatever insert plastic thought process you have in your head, more or less that's what you're looking with. And the advantage using craws on this technique is it will stand up the water. With a little bit of tight line or like a floating mono line. It will look something like that, where your nail weight's sitting on the bottom, but your hook, because you hook it, the way you're supposed to hook it is you hook it somewhere right at the base of wherever your action is on a creature bait. So I will hook it. So if in a scenario like this, I would hook it where I'm pinching it, which is toward like the middle of the bait in this case. But wherever, like right before you get all the claws and all the fancy stuff, is where you'd place your hook. And I don't rubber band it in this technique, which is why you lose a lot of plastics, because especially with a weird creature bait, it would hinder the action. On a trick worm, you could do it because it won't make a difference. But with this technique, think about it, if I rubber band it and there's all these appendages to your bait, it will limit what you can actually do with the bait. And so that's more or less how I'd break it. I would have I have nail weight down here toward the bottom. I'd have a hook toward the middle in this scenario. And then I basically have it standing up in the water. Now, the reason why this is a finesse style of pitching, or like a heavy cover, which is oxymoron itself, heavy cover pitching technique. I know that sounds weird, but just roll with it on this. Because for the following reason, wire guard, you pitch into that nasty cover. And with the light line, it's a lot more delicate than, say, using a 30-pound braid with a Texas rig and like a 15, 20-pound leader, where it's a little more stiff, a little more beefy. And with this rig, it sits there nicely. You can twitch it almost relatively in place or drag it really slowly, kind of like a drop shot. Except difference is drop shot, you're sitting 12, 11 inches off the bottom usually, 10 to 12, depending on how you set up your drop shot or how much tagging you have. The Niko rig sits right on the bottom. So it's appealing to those fish that are literally looking at a crawl right at the bottom. They'll suck it up. And this is a great technique for like little creeks, canals. The place that I fish for largemouth, follow me on Fish Brain if you haven't, by the way, because I cover a lot of those. I post a lot of those stuff. It's a very shallow canal. We're looking at about 3 feet of water. About 3 feet of water, maybe 4. And they eat a bunch of crayfish, or crawfish, whatever you want to call it. And so that's where this technique comes into play, because it imitates that little crawl moving along the bottom. So you can make pitches. You can get it far back in there without the fear of getting your bait hung up versus that open hook on a drop shot, or like a jig head on like a Ned rig, for example. And on top of that, you can just keep it slow, move it very slowly, almost like you slowly drag a jig, or like a slow drag a Texas rig. And let me actually get into that Texas rig. That reminds me. EWG hook on a Texas rig, a lot of time your bait does a weird fall over. Versus on a Niko rig, you can know it will stand up like so, because that's the way you're treating it. It's almost like a little puppet show for them, for the bass. And yeah, and it's so because of the lightweight, it's great for that shallow water. So it's a great bait. It's a great bank fishing tool. Any place you throw like an 1/8 ounce Texas rig, same place. I throw this. Although even better than Texas rig, it would go through weedless. It would go through grass a lot better, because a Texas rig, that bullet sinker can still get hung up in the grass and bring all the grass with you, or like the pond moss. The Niko rig, because the weight they're using is hidden within the plastic, it makes it a lot more weedless. So you can pull off stunts in certain kinds of grass you would never be able to pull off with an 1/8 or a 1/4 ounce Texas rig some of the time. Yeah. And the other good, so back to what I was saying about craws. The Yamamoto makes that craw like the half Cinco, half finesse craw. That's another good one. So just random thought at the top of my head. I didn't do that a lot. I don't know why, but I just do. So those are different kinds of craws. Pitch it. You can make a cast, and you could treat it like a dragging bait in that shallow water. So just an overall just great bank fishing technique. And yeah, so now let me actually get into let me actually make a good point when it comes to bank fishing with that setup. So the 10, 12 pound test, just mono, is a great all around. I'd actually make an argument for great all around bank fishing setup. While I'm here talking about it, because you can throw finesse, you can kind of throw like semi finesse plastics, like those creature baits on a little Niko rig, like a Ned rig. But you can also throw top waters. I would have no problem using 10-pound mono for like walking the dog, or like a popper while I'm just thinking about it. Just because it's a very good finesse clear water line for that scenario. So if you have like a see-through like walking the dog bait, great option. So yeah, so that's more or less it. Fishing the Niko rig. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me actually make a fun comment piece. Leave a comment if you've ever used the Niko rig, because it's a weird name of a rig. Not that many people think about it. Leave a comment if you ever used it, and if so, what soft plastic have you used it with? All right, guys, take care.